Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you say your name and your position / title?
Of course, Monza Stark, Associate Director for Multicultural Recruitment here at the University of Idaho in the Office of Admissions.
Nice. Can you briefly describe your position?
Yeah, so I have a very fancy title for basically recruiting students of color. My sole duty is to work with them through the admissions process as well as to connect with families and making sure that they understand the process, how they're going to pay for college, and I also oversee two +5 work studies that work with me in regards to working with our students of color.
Nice. Okay, so right now we're reading a book called The Leadership BS by Jeffrey Pfeiffer. In the book, he states the people who perform well are not at the very top. The people who actually perform well are not at the very top are the best person to learn from. Do you believe this statement?
I want to say to a certain point, yes. I've noticed that our staff that work in the grand or my goodness in the bottom, if you want to call it that, entry level jobs sometimes work harder because they want to go up in their positions, and sometimes they're in the trenches. So basically, they understand their territory. So in my situation, I have two supervisees that are in different locations. They oversee a territory, and I supervise them and hope that I can guide them. But I can't guide them if I don't know their territory, and they do. And so they know what's best for their location. And so what I do is have them tell me what is going to work, and if I see that the budgetary allows it, and if their dreams are not too high up here, then I allow it. Or don't even allow it, I say go for it. But sometimes when we're in a higher position, like I just mentioned, we care more about budgets. We care more about how we're going to look with our boss, whether we're going to make numbers happen, instead of thinking, in my supervising situation, about the student. And in my situation, we're here for the students. And so if we're not thinking about them first, we're not necessarily doing our job. And so I do believe that maybe sometimes our staff that are in lower positions work way more harder than us.
Okay, that's a good answer. Okay, so the Scottdale paradox is a realistic optimism that causes someone to not see the situation the way they really are.
Correct.
Now, do you know of any individual that report to you directly that use this approach?
So, just like I mentioned about how my supervisees are the hardest people that you'll ever meet, they also want the stars and the moon. And so I try to be as most empathetic and motivating as I can be. But sometimes, because they're also not in these trenches where it's politics, it's what's happening with the university, the budgeting, they want things that sometimes can't happen. So I'll give you an example. One of my supervisees wants a bus to come from Idaho Falls, and that is going to cost us roughly $5,000. We look through her budget, we look through my budget, and it's not a possibility right now. It doesn't mean that we can't do it, but I'm telling her, let's try and think about other ways. For example, writing a grant and seeing if someone else would be willing to put together something together for us to bring up that bus, and then we can pitch in a certain amount, because we can, to a certain point, maybe put $2,000 instead of all $5,000. But she's also in the forms of, she hasn't ever written a grant, so she thinks that it's not possible. I have, and I'm trying to show her that it can be done, but sometimes the way that she thinks and the way that I think pull each other back and forth. So yes.
Okay. Do you think that theory, that method of thinking, that approach is fatal? Why or why not?
It can be, but it shouldn't be. It can be because for a second, when for example, in that situation with my supervising, it demotivated her. She's like, well, I don't want to do it anymore. And I'm like, but that's not the point. I just asked you a couple of questions on how we were going to do it, what the process is going to be, how much it's going to cost you. But then once I started getting into those little questions, she didn't know how to answer them. And so instead of going to find an answer, she just gave up.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, I realized that I had to step in as a supervisor and motivate her again and just say,
to work with me.
Let's talk about, okay, the questions that I asked you. For example, she wanted to charge $50 per individual to get on the bus. I said, how can we find another way so that the students don't have to pay that $50? Well, what about the district? I'm like, tell me more about that. And so it sounds like certain districts are willing to pay a certain amount, roughly $25 per student, to come to a university. And so I'm like, there you go. So you know the answers. You weren't ready or you weren't prepared for it. But it shouldn't prevent them from doing their job. It shouldn't prevent them from pursuing those dreams for those students. It just means it's going to take some time.
Yeah. Okay. So the author in the same book, Leadership BS, described 3 workplace stressors: economic security, the absence of job control, and medical care. Do you feel these are legitimate workplace stressors in your current position?
I don't know about the medical, but the monetary one, yes. Our positions are entry-level jobs. And at times when a staff member gets to a certain point, they're ready to jump for a next level, which is associate director. We don't have that many openings in associate directors that often. And so when a recruiter is ready to move on, we lose them because we don't actually increase their budgets or their salary. So our turnover is basically, since I've been here, we lose probably 4 to 5 recruiters every single year. So every year we're adding some new staff onto our recruitment team, and a lot of it has to do because we're in the state of Idaho, so our pay
is lower.
Our salary is lower
yeah.
than any other institution, and we just don't have it right now.
Mm-hmm.
What was the third one?
The
medical,
the Medicare, absence of job and economic security.
So job, I think that there's many. I don't know that the staff that I've worked with have told me that they can't find jobs. Actually, I think that they find them way more faster when they know that they're capped. But I don't think that that's been an issue right now within our staff.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, servant leadership is where leaders share control and their power with those around them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they could perform and develop at a higher level. Do you feel like you are a servant leader?
Yes. So if I were to quit today, Daisy or Effie, my supervisees, could jump into my job because I've taught them everything I know or everything I do. Now, if it's up to them though to practice it. So if I tell them all that I write grants, and I do it because I don't have enough budget, so I have to find it somewhere else. And I encourage them, and I show them the proposals, and I show them who I'm getting the money from. It's up to them to submit that grant for themselves as well, obviously. But when it comes to knowing what are our top Latino, schools in both Boise, Twin Falls, Idaho Falls, they know those. They know what I oversee a huge event for Latino students in the state of Idaho. They know exactly who the contact person is, how to run the program while they're there. So it's not like they can't just do my job. The only reason why I truly think that the only reason why they're not here, standing here with you today, is because I haven't quit.
Yeah.
And once I do expect both of them to apply for my position.
Mm-hmm. And actually to get it.
And to get it, okay. Correct.
You just answered the second question. Okay, so we're good. A leadership role is complicated because you wear several hats.
Correct.
Some say that's a trait of a that some say that a trait of a good leader is putting others' interests first.
Correct.
Do you think his statement is true? And how do you do that in your current position?
Correct. Huge. If my staff is not happy with me, or if it's not happy with what's happening, I lose them, and I do not want to lose them.
Mm-hmm.
They are too good at what they do to see them go to another institution and use those skills elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to stay here. And in order to do that, I have to motivate them. I have to award them. I have to remind them how great of people they are. Because even if they hear how appreciative I am by doing the high school visits that they do, goes a long way versus not saying anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
I do connect with my recruits my supervisees twice a month, and it's at the beginning of the month where we set up together and make a plan for the month, and then we meet at the end of the month to see if we followed through our plan, and if we did, then there's a reward, and so that can be from sending them my girls are big in Ulta, so sending them a card to Ulta and this is coming from my own budget. It's not my personal budget. It's not coming from the university's budget. It's also sending them a dinner certificate to a certain location of their favorite place, because I want them to be happy with this institution and with their job.
Okay, that's perfect.
Awesome.
Jose, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You've been fantastic. Enjoy the rest of your day.